I still remember the sting of lemon disinfectant in the carpet of our foyer the morning everything started to fall apart. I was on my hands and knees, scrubbing a mud track my husband, Malcolm, dragged in from the rain the night before. My hair was tied up in a silk scarf, my leggings were dotted with bleach specks, and my palms were burning from the cleaner. I should have been packing for my trip, not cleaning for a man who never once said thank you. But back then, I still believed in trying. Malcolm came downstairs fresh from a shower, strolling barefoot across the hardwood like he didn't see me kneeling there. His towel hung low on his hips, his cologne strong enough to sting. He stepped right over the spot I was scrubbing, then paused, looked down at me and laughed under his breath. "You missed a spot, maid." There it was. The word he'd started testing out like it might feel good on his tongue. Maid. Like I wasn't the woman who'd been paying most of the bills for 2 years. Like I wasn't the one who'd stood beside him through layoffs, bad business choices, a gambling problem he still pretended didn't exist. I swallowed the heat rising in my throat and forced a smile I didn't feel. "I'm not your maid, Malcolm," he smirked. "Could have fooled me. Always crawling around cleaning up after me. What else should I call you?" He said it like a joke, but I saw the truth in his eyes. He liked the power. Liked the idea of me beneath him. Liked to pretend my money was what kept our roof over our heads. And maybe I could have ignored it, just like I ignored the late-night texts he turned his screen away for, the perfume on shirts that wasn't mine, the sudden overtime hours. But that morning something in me cracked. "I have a flight today," I reminded him. "A mandatory work trip, you know that." Malcolm shrugged like my career didn't matter. "Right, going to play boss again at that cute little job of yours." Cute little job. If only he knew the truth he'd spent years too arrogant to uncover. I stood slowly, wiped my hands on a towel and met his eyes. "I'll be back tomorrow night." He smirked again, already walking away. "Whatever you say, country bumpkin." That one hurt. He pulled it from the deepest part of my childhood, the part he knew made me vulnerable, the girl who grew up in a small town, raised by grandparents who worked 3 jobs. He used it like a weapon. He always did. But the thing about people like Malcolm is they mistake quiet for weak. And that's the mistake that destroys them in the end. 'Cause by the end of this story, Malcolm would be on his knees in an airport terminal, in front of 200 shocked passengers, begging me, and I would be looking down at him, not with love, not with anger, just with the cold truth. "But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, you need to know how the plane ride went." And why the flight attendant leaned down, whispered something in my ear. And changed everything. I arrived at the airport 2 hours before my flight, rolling a discreet black suitcase behind me. Nobody paid attention to me, and that was exactly how I wanted it. Just another woman in leggings and a long cardigan, hair pulled back, minding her business. If anyone recognized me, they didn't approach. That was one perk of running things from behind the scenes. I moved through security smoothly, headed toward my gate, and sat down with my headphones over my ears, pretending to scroll. The truth was, my trip wasn't a work trip. It was a board meeting, a quarterly overview, a restructuring session. One I attended every 3 months because the cute little job Malcolm always mocked, it wasn't a job, it was an empire, and the airline I was about to fly on, Skystride Air, was mine, not a little piece. Not partial ownership, not a seat on a committee, I owned it. 100%. Lock, stock, and runway, bought quietly, managed discreetly, hidden perfectly. I'd been building my silent empire for years, investing every extra paycheck, flipping properties, acquiring businesses under a trust Malcolm never asked about because he never thought I had the capacity to own anything more complex than a mop. He saw the house. The chores, the dinners, the soft voice. He never saw the strategy. The meetings at 2 a.m., the lawyers, the accountants, the signatures in glass conference rooms overlooking entire cities. Men like Malcolm never do. My flight was called and I boarded early, per a privilege I never used publicly. One of my flight attendants, a tall woman with neat braids and warm eyes named Kiara, smiled at me. "Good morning," she said. "Welcome aboard," I nodded, keeping my identity low. "Morning." I took my first-class seat and settled in with a soft exhale. But as passengers boarded, I noticed something strange. A woman walked by who looked familiar, not in a friend way. That perfume was on my husband's shirt last week, slim waist, perfect curls, makeup flawless, smile too bright, and her entire vibe exactly Malcolm's type. She slid into seat 3 rows behind me, laughing too loudly at something on her phone. The hairs on the back of my neck rose. I'd seen her before, not in person, but in the reflection of Malcolm's laptop when he forgot I could see the screen in the glass behind him. A blurry selfie, a voice note, a flash of cleavage. He thought he was slick. But Malcolm never remembered I played chess, not checkers. I buckled my seatbelt slowly. If she was on this flight, where was he? The answer arrived exactly 60 seconds later. Because Malcolm himself, my husband, my you missed a spot, maid husband, walked onto the plane wearing sunglasses, an expensive jacket he'd sworn he couldn't afford, and the stupid, confident smirk he put on when he was lying. He didn't see me at first. He walked right past me, stopped at row 6, and leaned down to kiss the woman behind me, kiss her full lip press. Whisper in her ear, hand on her hip. In public, my ears rang. He told me he was working from home today. Said he had too much paperwork to deal with. Told me to text when I landed. Yet here he was boarding my airline, sitting behind me with his side piece wearing fresh gloss. My throat tightened, but I didn't breathe a word. Not yet. Let him dig the grave a little deeper. Let him show me just how stupid he thought I was. The plane door closed. The attendants began their safety checks. And that's when Kiara, the flight attendant who'd greeted me so warmly, passed by my seat, paused, leaned down like she was adjusting my tray table, and whispered so quietly only I could hear it. He doesn't know you own the whole airline, does he? My eyes shot to hers. She smiled knowingly. And just like that, the match was lit. My pulse thudded in my ears, not from fear. No, I felt something far sharper. A rising heat. A gathering storm. A shift in the air that told me the universe had finally aligned for the reveal I'd been postponing. I didn't answer Kiara directly. I just gave her a slow, deliberate smile, the kind that said everything without a word. She nodded subtly, understanding more than I expected. Just say the word if you need anything, she murmured, squeezing my shoulder before continuing down the aisle. I turned my head slightly, looking between the seats. Malcolm was already leaned into his mistress. Her name, I now remembered, was Sierra, whispering something I couldn't hear, but I didn't need to hear it. His hand on her thigh said enough. The rage I'd been swallowing for a year finally settled into something calmer. Sharper, like the feeling before checkmate in a game nobody else realizes they've already lost. I pulled out my phone, not to record, not yet, but to listen. The plane engine hummed. The attendants secured the cabin. And then Sierra giggled loudly, loud enough for half the cabin to hear. Baby, I can't believe your wife thinks you're home right now. That was it, that was the line. I closed my eyes, inhaled, and let the pain pour in like cold water because betrayal hurts. Even when you expect it, even when you're prepared, even when you're already planning your revenge in real time. And that was the moment the early betrayal scene ended, which means now is where the CTA block goes, right here. Exactly where you asked. Have you ever been called just a maid by the man who swore to love you forever? If that knife still twists in your chest, smash the like button right now. Drop your name, your city, and the word present in the comments. Let's see who's watching from Atlanta, Miami, London, Lagos, Johannesburg, Houston. Type, YAS QUEEN if you're ready for this revenge. The plane took off, but my mind wasn't in the sky, it was somewhere deeper. Somewhere colder. Somewhere calculating. Sierra rested her head on Malcolm's shoulder. He kissed her forehead. He looked peaceful, comfortable, secure in the belief that I was at home scrubbing floors like a maid while he lived a double life. But the universe has a funny way of balancing scales. Because 30,000 feet above the earth, while clouds brushed past the windows and champagne glasses clinked, I was about to pull off the quietest, cleanest revenge a woman could execute, and neither of them saw it coming. Not yet, but they would soon. Very soon. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, warm and steady, announcing our cruising altitude. The seatbelt sign blinked off with a soft chime. People stretched, ordered drinks, settled in. But I stayed perfectly still, hands folded, face neutral, gaze locked on the back of the seat in front of me. I wasn't thinking about Malcolm. Not anymore. I was thinking about the board meeting. In 3 hours, I'd be sitting at a glass table, surrounded by executives who had no idea I was flying on one of my own planes today. They thought I'd take the private jet this quarter, the same one I used for emergency visits. But I didn't want private today. I wanted public. I wanted witnesses when the whole truth finally rose to the surface. I wanted the universe to give me a front row seat to the consequences of Malcolm's disrespect. A flight attendant rolled a cart down the aisle. Not Kiara, another one, a younger man with a clean fade and a soft smile. He stopped at my row. Good afternoon, ma'am. Would you like something to drink? Water, please. He poured a glass with perfect precision. Good, the training updates we'd implemented 2 quarters ago were working. As he handed me the glass, he hesitated. Ms. Lane, he whispered. I blinked once. I almost hadn't heard him over the engine noise. He looked nervous, like he wasn't sure he should have said it. No worries, I whispered back. Continue your service. His shoulders loosened with relief. He nodded and rolled the cart forward, but Malcolm didn't notice. He was too busy letting Sierra take selfies on his shoulder. She posed her lips into a pout, angled her phone a little too high, and snapped a picture that included half of his face. I watched her screen reflection in the polished metal of the window frame. She posted it. Immediately. Hashtag hijacking your man hashtag. Skystride hashtag. First class life my jaw tightened. My airline, my first class, my money, and she had the nerve to flaunt it online. They didn't know karma was already buckling its seatbelt, but the whisper of my name by that attendant. That tiny slip, it wasn't a problem, it was a warning because the crew knew me. A handful of them recognized me every quarter and we kept it discreet. Professional. But Kiara was the only one who'd ever said something aloud. She opened the door, and now the storm was rolling in. Midway through the flight, Malcolm got up to use the restroom. I didn't move, didn't look back, didn't even shift my expression. Sierra scrolled through her phone, humming a song off-key. She leaned her seat back further than she should have, bumping my knee slightly. She didn't apologize, because of course she didn't. Malcolm returned a few minutes later, but as he approached their row, Kiara intercepted him with a polite smile. "Sir, would you mind stepping to the side for just a moment? We're preparing for meal service." He stepped aside, confused. Sure." Kiara glanced toward me. I kept my gaze forward, completely blank. A ghost in plain sight. When Malcolm sat back down, he grumbled under his breath. Sierra giggled again. It was grating, like a fork scraping porcelain. My phone buzzed with a notification. I glanced at the screen. A banking update. My fingerprint opened the encrypted folder automatically. Inside were subfolders for each company I owned under my trust. The Skystride folder was already glowing with a notification. A message from my CFO. Subject: preliminary merger details ready for your approval. Not today. Not yet, but soon. I closed the folder and took a slow breath. I had a flight to finish. A show to watch. A bomb to drop. I checked the time. 1 hour to landing. 1 hour until everything Malcolm believed about himself would unravel. 1 hour until Sierra's little victory parade ended abruptly. 1 hour until the humiliation scene that would break the internet. And just as I leaned back, eyes half closed, I heard it. Sierra's voice, loud, shrill, directed at me. Excuse me, your hair is in my space." My eyes snapped open. I turned my head slowly. "I'm sorry," she rolled her eyes dramatically. "Your hair, it's big, it's touching my arm. Can you move it?" I stared at her. Not the hair, not the insult, her eyes. Eyes that didn't know she was talking to the woman who paid her flight miles today. I smoothed my hair calmly. "Better," she shrugged. "I guess." Malcolm smirked that smirk. I almost laughed. He thought I was embarrassed. Thought I'd shrink. Thought I'd retreat like the maid he claimed I was. But the thing about playing small for so long is people forget that I'm the one controlling the board, and I was about to move my queen. Out of nowhere, turbulence rattled the cabin. Not the gentle kind, this was sharp, sudden, jarring. People gasped. Drinks sloshed. A baby cried somewhere in row 9, but I stayed still, hands gripping the armrests lightly. Kiara's voice came over the intercom. Calm, professional, controlled. "Ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your seatbelts immediately. This is just a brief pocket of turbulence." A few passengers panicked. Not unusual, but Malcolm, he clutched Sierra like she was a life raft. Tough guy persona cracked instantly. She whimpered dramatically, burying her face in his chest. I almost felt bad for the performance they were putting on, almost. Then the turbulence eased. People relaxed, murmuring in relief, but Kiara didn't. She walked down the aisle briskly and stopped right beside me again. "Ms. Lane, we have a situation." I blinked. "What kind?" She leaned in slightly, voice low. "Your husband and the woman with him, they tried to use the crew call button to ask for complimentary champagne. They said," she hesitated, then continued, "they said the maid in front of us should pay for it." Heat rose in my chest, not anger, clarification, confirmation of the level of disrespect I was truly dealing with. I met Kiara's eyes. "Thank you for telling me," she straightened. "We also have another issue. One of the pilots saw Sierra's social media posts. They're going viral, fast, tagging the airline, posting from first class." The irony was delicious. My airline's PR team was probably already scrambling. But this was perfect. I turned my head, glancing through the slit between the seats. Sierra was laughing again, scrolling through her notifications, oblivious. Malcolm was wiping sweat from his forehead, and I felt it, the shift, the moment the red line turns green, the moment the plan begins. "Kiara," I said softly. "Yes, how busy will the terminal be when we land?" "Very," she replied. 3 delayed flights just landed. At least 200 people at the gates. A slow smile spread across my lips. Perfect, absolutely perfect. I unbuckled my seatbelt just long enough to lean forward slightly. Time to begin the unraveling. "Prepare for landing," the pilot announced. Yes, prepare, because the humiliation, the begging. The public reveal it was waiting just beyond that gate, and neither of them had a clue. The plane began its descent, banking gently as the city came into view beneath the clouds. Twinkling rooftops, streaks of highways, tiny cars moving like ants, everything looked small from above. Temporary, insignificant. I pressed my fingers lightly to the armrest, grounding myself, steadying my breath. The ending of a marriage shouldn't feel peaceful, but somehow it did. Malcolm and Sierra were too wrapped up in their own little bubble to notice the way the energy shifted around us. Passengers sat straighter. Attendants spoke in hushed tones. Even the air tasted different, anticipation with a hint of retribution. As we glided lower, Malcolm reached forward and tapped my seat. Hey, he said loudly. Can you not slam your recline back when we land? Some of us are trying to relax. I turned my head slowly, my voice was calm. My seat hasn't moved, he scoffed. Well then stop fidgeting or whatever. You're shaking the whole row, Sierra giggled. Seriously. Some people shouldn't fly first class. I looked at her. Really looked, she was beautiful, yes, polished, young, makeup so flawless it was almost airbrushed. But beneath it all, I saw the insecurity trembling behind her heavy lashes, the desperate hunger for validation, the hope that Malcolm's attention would carry her somewhere meaningful. But she didn't know she'd boarded a plane owned by the wife she just insulted. She didn't know the man beside her had built his entire lifestyle on my income. She didn't know she was one shallow breath away from being the star of her own downfall. And Malcolm, poor Malcolm, still thought he had the upper hand. I smiled gently. I'll do my best not to inconvenience you. He smirked, victorious in a game he wasn't even qualified to play. The wheels touched down. A smooth landing, a new beginning, a quiet, final ending. The plane slowed along the runway, engines humming as it taxied toward the terminal. Passengers began unbuckling even before the ding. Side glances filled the cabin, the kind people give when something feels off but they can't explain why. Then the intercom crackled. It wasn't the pilot, it was Kiara, it was the head purser, a woman who only speaks when something serious is happening. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We will be holding for a brief moment before docking at the gate. A murmur rippled through the cabin. Malcolm frowned. What now? This airline is always doing something stupid. I tilted my head. Oh, Malcolm. Your mouth is digging your grave faster than I ever could. The doors stayed closed. No movement. No explanation. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, pulling out phones, stretching legs. But the attendants remained composed, strategically positioned along the aisles in a stance I recognized. It was the corporate protocol stance. One used when the owner of the airline was on the plane. One used when privacy, respect, and procedure needed to be maintained at the highest level. My protocol, my rules, my sky. Malcolm grew irritated instantly, groaning loudly, checking his watch like he had somewhere urgent to be besides cheating on his wife in row 6. This is ridiculous, he snapped. They can't keep us here like. The intercom beeped again. Ms. Lane, the purser said, her voice warm but formal. At your convenience, the captain would like a brief word before disembarkation. Every head turned, every pair of eyes found me, every whisper started. I stood slowly, smoothing my cardigan. Malcolm and Sierra froze mid-breath. I walked down the aisle calmly, every step measured, every heartbeat steady. Whispers grew louder. Is that the owner, the CEO? Why is the captain requesting her? I reached the front galley where the captain waited with Kiara at his side. The captain inclined his head respectfully. Ms. Lane, he said quietly. We have everything prepared, just as you requested. Thank you, I replied. Behind me, Malcolm's voice rose. What the hell is going on? Sierra shrank in her seat, eyes wide. I turned just enough for my gaze to find him. Patience, I said softly. The jet bridge connected with a heavy thud. It was time. Kiara leaned in. Security is waiting at the gate. The crowd is large. Good, I said. Let's get this over with. The flight attendants didn't open the doors for passengers. Not yet. They opened them for me, only me. I stepped into the jet bridge, the cool air brushing my skin. I could hear the noise from the terminal, hundreds of people talking, boarding, rushing, complaining, living ordinary lives, completely unaware that a spectacle was about to erupt right in front of them. I waited 3 steps ahead. Then, just as planned, the attendants announced, passengers may now disembark. I moved to the side, out of view, watching, waiting, letting the pieces shift into place. Passengers streamed into the terminal, stretching stiff limbs, adjusting bags, scanning for loved ones. A blur of faces, voices, rolling suitcases, airport announcements. I saw none of it clearly. I was watching for one person, one man, my husband. Malcolm stepped into the gate area with Sierra clinging to his arm, both of them wearing sunglasses indoors like a tacky celebrity couple. He looked around, annoyed, searching for who knows what. Comfort, An escape plan, a lie to slip into. He was met with a sea of strangers. And then he saw me, standing tall beside airport security, flanked by two executives he'd never met, my posture straight, my chin lifted, my expression unreadable. He blinked in confusion, then recognition, then fear. Sierra's hand slipped from his arm. She whispered, "Is that your wife?" He didn't answer, he couldn't. I stepped forward, the crowd parting instinctively, their attention drawn like gravity toward tension they didn't fully understand. Malcolm swallowed hard. "Baby, what are you doing here?" I didn't blink. "I could ask you the same." People slowed, phones lifted discreetly. Security held the perimeter. He took a hesitant step forward. I can explain." "Can you?" My voice was soft, deadly. "Explain why you told me you were home working while you were on my plane." Sierra's eyes widened. "Your plane," the crowd murmured. Malcolm paled. "Your plane? What are you talking?" I lifted one eyebrow. Kiara stepped forward, her voice carrying perfectly. "She owns Skystride Air." Gasps erupted. Sierra stumbled back as if struck. Malcolm's breath disappeared. You own the airline." "No," I corrected, stepping closer. "I own the entire airline, all of it, every runway, every gate, every seat you disrespected, every mile you flew today." The color drained from his face so fast it was almost art. I wasn't done, not even close, but the begging. The falling to his knees in front of 200 shocked passengers. That was coming. Very soon. And when it happened, the internet would never forget it. Malcolm staggered backward as if I'd physically struck him. Sierra clutched his arm, desperately whispering reassurances he didn't hear because the whole terminal had gone silent. Phones were out, eyes glued, cameras ready. I stepped closer, letting every inch of my presence fill the space between us. People were staring. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Is this really happening? Who is she?" The murmurs rose into audible chatter. "Malcolm," I said, my voice calm but sharp, "you thought I was just the help. The maid, the woman who cleaned your messes and made your life convenient. You thought I was a country bumpkin." He opened his mouth, but I silenced him with a slight lift of my hand. "I'm not the help, I'm the owner. I built everything around you while you were busy pretending I didn't exist." Sierra's jaw dropped. Her phone slipped from her hand. People gasped. Malcolm's face turned from confusion to terror. He tried to step forward, but I wasn't giving space. I was closing it in slowly, deliberately, for maximum effect. "You see," I continued, "every mile you thought you flew in luxury, every perk you assumed you were entitled to, every little power move you made over me," I paused for dramatic effect, "was mine, mine to give, mine to take, mine to leverage." The crowd was completely silent now. Some pulled out phones. Others just stared, mouths open, and then I saw it, the first tear in Malcolm's facade. The first flicker of panic behind his eyes. I smiled just slightly. "Yes, that's it." Malcolm's knees buckled, not literally yet, but he knew the storm was coming. Sierra looked around wildly, realizing in slow motion that she was standing on borrowed territory. This wasn't her playground anymore. This wasn't a game she could cheat in. Her first-class confidence crumbled into something fragile, almost comedic. I gestured toward the center of the crowd, the perfect spot in front of 200 witnesses. Security subtly guided them back, giving us space. Malcolm's knees hit the floor before he even realized it. "Please, please," his voice cracked. "I didn't mean I can fix this," the crowd gasped collectively. Someone whispered, "Is he really begging?" Another whispered, "This is insane." I stepped closer, letting the weight of my empire and the weight of his betrayal press down without touching him. "Beg all you want," I said softly, letting every word slice slowly. "Because this is what disrespect looks like in public. This is what arrogance looks like when confronted by someone you underestimated." He tried to rise, failed, tried to explain. Words stumbled like broken glass from his lips. Sierra whimpered, hiding behind his back. A few passengers recorded, others just stared. Every single one of them was witness to the moment Malcolm learned that calling someone useless or just the help comes with consequences. And then the subtle shift occurred. His financial world started to crumble. Kiara stepped forward, holding a tablet. A few quick taps, a few muted commands, and suddenly Malcolm's corporate card accounts went offline. Banking apps froze on the phones of every business he controlled. Assets began transferring quietly to holding accounts he couldn't access. Notifications pinged, transaction declined, account frozen, assets transferred. His eyes widened in disbelief. What did you?" I didn't answer. I let the silence speak for itself. Let the power of quiet accumulation, of patience, of long-term strategy, and of sheer intelligence reverberate. Sierra looked like she might faint. This isn't real," she whispered, voice trembling. "It's very real," I said, leaning down so Malcolm could see every detail of my calm, unyielding expression. You thought you had power over me, you thought calling me maid made you king, but it only showed everyone how small you really were. Malcolm pressed his palms to his face. I could see the sweat, the shame. The absolute horror of a man realizing that all the privileges he had taken for granted were built on my work, my money, my patience, and still the crowd watched. Still everyone recorded. Still every single person in that terminal now had a front row seat to Malcolm's complete unmasking. I took a step back. I let Kiara approach him. She whispered something in his ear, likely an update about his assets, because the change in his posture was instantaneous. Eyes wide, jaw slack, knees trembling, yes. This was the moment. The begging, the humiliation, the fall from self-made arrogance to exposed, pleading failure, and it was all perfectly orchestrated. I took a slow step forward, letting the noise of the terminal, the gasps, the camera phones, the whispers wrap around Malcolm like a cage. He was trembling now, not just from embarrassment, but from the sharp sting of complete financial annihilation. Every single bank account he thought was untouchable, gone. Every credit line he had relied on, frozen. Every asset he assumed he controlled, transferred out of reach. Sierra was hyperventilating, clutching her phone like a lifeline. She had thought she was untouchable, untarnished, riding on Malcolm's arrogance. But the reality hit her harder than any plane turbulence could. She realized too late that her crown had been borrowed, and the queen sitting across from her had been building an empire quietly, invisibly, relentlessly. Malcolm knelt there, groaning softly, trying to compose himself. I didn't know, I swear. I shook my head slowly. You didn't know? Malcolm, that's exactly the problem. You never saw me, you never listened. You thought I was beneath you, that I was small, that I was nothing. A few passengers whispered to one another. A woman in business attire gasped audibly. She owns the airline. I nodded once. The murmurs intensified, then Kiara stepped in, her voice clear and commanding. Sir, if you don't stand aside, we'll have to escort you. Malcolm's face went pale. He had just realized that his fate wasn't only public humiliation, but the complete dismantling of everything he had relied upon. And it was happening before 200 witnesses. I let him soak in the shame. Let him feel the weight of every word he ever said to diminish me. The titles, the insults, the casual power plays, they all came crashing down now, and I smiled, just slightly, because patience had paid off. Silence had been my ally, and now justice was very public. The terminal buzzed as my ride-or-die best friend, my sister-like confidant, arrived. She'd flown in from halfway across the country for this moment. My glow-up, my revenge, my vindication, she wasn't missing a single second. Her presence bolstered my confidence, reminded me that I was never truly alone. Even when Malcolm made me feel invisible, she swept past the crowd with a knowing grin. Ready, Queen, she whispered, her eyes sparkling with pride. Always, I replied. We shared a brief nod, the kind that communicated decades of loyalty, understanding, and shared battles. Then she melted into the crowd as a quiet accomplice, perfectly blending in, letting the story unfold with maximum theatricality. I turned back to Malcolm. His knees pressed to the floor, eyes wide, lips quivering. The humiliation scene wasn't over, it was about to crescendo. I raised my voice just slightly so the murmurs carried. You thought I would let this slide. You thought your little games and your betrayal would go unnoticed. But the empire you ignored, it has eyes, it has ears, it has me. The passengers leaned in. Some held their phones, capturing every second, some just stared, mouths open. The energy was electric, charged with the satisfaction of witnessing a true reckoning. Malcolm's pleas grew louder, more desperate. Please don't do this, I'll fix it, I raised a hand. Silence fell like a velvet curtain. His desperation hung in the air, raw, unfiltered. I didn't flinch. I didn't retreat. I didn't even smile fully. I just waited. The universe had done its part. Now it was my move. Then came the luxury glow-up montage. Not on a screen, but in the way I carried myself, in the quiet dominance I radiated. My sister subtly coordinated with Kiara, arranging for discreet notifications to be sent to high-profile passengers, influencers, and executives. Within minutes, whispers turned into screenshots. Screenshots turned into online posts. The terminal became a stage where the story of Malcolm's unraveling played out in real time. Passengers who had once glanced at me as a quiet, unassuming traveler now saw the woman in full command of the situation. My posture, my calm demeanor, the way I let the humiliation simmer without adding unnecessary venom, it all radiated power. I walked past the kneeling man, just close enough for him to feel my presence. He tried to meet my eyes. I looked past him, straight into the crowd, letting every person witness the consequence of arrogance and disrespect. He finally realized, fully realized that the quiet woman he had belittled, called a maid, a country bumpkin, and just the help, had orchestrated his public collapse from the shadows. I turned slightly to acknowledge Kiara and my sister, their supportive smiles reminding me that I was never acting alone. Every decision, every investment, every careful, secret move had led to this moment. And the magnitude of my victory settled over me like the soft warmth of first-class leather against skin. Unshakable, undeniable, and entirely mine. Malcolm whimpered softly, utterly broken, completely exposed. The airport terminal's hum had shifted into a reverent silence. My empire had spoken without uttering a single shout, and yet the final move, the checkmate, was still ahead. I let the silence stretch, not because I needed time but because he did. Malcolm needed to sit in the wreckage of everything he thought he controlled. The terminal lights flickered off the glossy floors, and for the first time in years I felt weightless. Free, whole. A security officer approached slowly, leaning toward me with professional caution. "Ma'am, would you like him escorted out?" Malcolm's head snapped up. "No, please, I just need to talk to her. Just her, please, please, baby, please." There it was, baby. The word he used only when he wanted something. When he needed comfort, forgiveness, a woman who would shrug off betrayal and step right back into the role of caretaker. The role he thought I was born to play. I knelt down not because he deserved it but because I wanted him to see my eyes clearly when I ended this charade forever. "Malcolm," I whispered, "you spent years calling me useless, calling me a maid, a country bumpkin, just the help. And now look at you." I let my gaze trail slowly down to the floor where he knelt, shaking, broken, clutching my pant leg like a lifeline. "Tell me, who's the helpless one right now?" he sobbed. Real, heavy sobs that made the passengers flinch. He buried his forehead against my knee. I messed up so bad. I'll go to counseling, I'll stop drinking. I'll change numbers, I'll delete everything. I'll do anything, just don't leave me." I pulled my leg away gently. "I left you the moment you thought I was beneath you," I said softly. "Today is just the paperwork catching up." A wave of whispers rippled through the terminal. A few passengers quietly applauded. Some even wiped their eyes. This wasn't cruelty. This was closure, for me, and for every silent woman watching. The police arrived then, unplanned but perfectly timed, another twist woven seamlessly by fate. Their presence sent a collective murmur through the terminal. Two officers stepped forward, hats tucked under their arms, posture firm. "Ma'am," one of them said carefully, "we received a call about a domestic disturbance involving threats. We were told to check on your safety." Malcolm's head whipped around. "What? No, I didn't threaten her." One officer raised a hand to halt him. "Sir, we're not here to make assumptions. We just need to be sure she's okay." I inhaled slowly. Kiara must have made the call. She'd always been protective like that. Whether or not Malcolm intended harm was irrelevant. The truth was that his desperation had escalated, and she wasn't going to risk my safety for a second. "I'm okay," I said softly to the officers. "I appreciate you coming, truly, but I'm not in danger." They nodded respectfully and stepped back, remaining nearby just in case. Malcolm sagged in relief, only to look up and realize something far worse. Because behind those two officers stood another woman. His eyes widened in horror. She looked exactly like Sierra, the same hair, same face, same stance. A near-perfect double-A doppelganger, but this one was furious, and the moment she opened her mouth the entire crowd gasped. "Malcolm," she snarled, "you think you can ghost me and run off on a damn flight like I wouldn't find out?" Sierra shrieked. "Who is she?" I tilted my head, watching the chaos unfold. This wasn't my doing. But Karma. Oh, Karma loved to show off. The doppelganger stormed toward him, waving screenshots, voicemails, bank charges he clearly didn't think anyone would cross-reference. Malcolm scrabbled backward on his knees, babbling excuses that tripped over each other in a frantic mess. He wasn't just cheating with Sierra. He had been cheating with Sierra's look-alike too. Passengers clutched their chests, gasping, whispering louder than ever. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. He was imploding on his own. And then it was time. The final move. The inevitable conclusion of everything I had endured, everything I had planned, everything I had risen above. I stepped forward again. My steps slow, deliberate. Regal Malcolm was now flanked by two furious women, a sea of judgmental stares, police officers, security staff, my sister, and nearly 200 strangers who would recount this story for years. He reached desperately for me. "Please, please, don't walk away. Don't leave me with nothing." I leaned in close. "Malcolm," I whispered, "you were so busy chasing cheap imitations, you didn't notice the Queen building an empire right under your nose." His eyes shook with disbelief, tears spilling over. I gave him one last small, devastating smile. "Checkmate, darling. Never play chess with a queen." Never underestimate the woman who stayed quiet while building her empire in the dark. If this story had you screaming at your phone, hit that super thanks so I can keep dropping fire every week. Comment your city and your favorite part. I read every single one. 2 more stories on screen right now. Right arrow, subscribe, and turn on all notifications. See you in the next one, Queens. With love and respect.